This weekend, Transformers 1 opened in theaters. Now it's time to rank all 8 theatrically released Transformers movies from the worst to the best. In last place is Dark of the Moon. The second Revenge of the Fallen is infamously terrible, but somehow, despite all the complaints people had about the second one, they somehow managed to make this one even worse. Megan Fox didn't want to return for this one, and while she wasn't good in the first two films, the actress they replaced her with is somehow just as bad, possibly worse. The movie barely has a plot. It's pretty much just 3 hours of explosions, and it drags out so much that it just gets repetitive and stops being fun. It has a pretty simple plot about the moon landing and how the Decepticons were involved, which could be interesting, but it oversteps that concept instead of just keeping it simple. Number 8, Revenge of the Fallen. Now, I don't really blame anyone involved for how the movie turned out. I blame the 2008 writer's strike. You can tell that this movie was heavily affected by it, mainly the last third, because it's super rushed, because they wanted to get the movie out 2 years after the first one, instead of delaying it to finish the script. Writer's strike aside, though, it's still not good. Michael Bay's super vulgar humor and racist stereotypes are an issue with all his Transformers movies, but even more so with this one. The film can have some fun moments with the battle scenes, but the plot and dialogue are atrocious. Number 7, The Last Night. While the dialogue and humor aren't as horrible as the other Bay films, which is why it's a bit higher on this list than it should be, this is where the films on a plot level pretty much gave up. The film feels like 3 or 4 different movies with the way it's structured. Every 30 minutes, there's a new plotline. It's very incoherent. First 30 minutes are about a group of kids in a junkyard to team up with Mark Wahlberg, and then the next little bit is about going on a quest to find something involving Merlin and King Arthur, and then. It just feels like they were making it up as they went along. Number 6, Transformers 1987. The biggest problem with this movie is if you haven't seen the show, you're totally lost. It doesn't take the time to explain about who any of the characters are, it just throws you into it, and there's barely any plot. It's just mindless action. Though the soundtrack choices are pretty awesome. Mostly. There's a scene where the Autobots are getting absolutely slaughtered by the Decepticons, and the music they play is super upbeat and out of place. There's a randomly placed Weird Al song that doesn't have anything to do with the movie. It's just scenes like this that make the movie feel like it's a YouTube poop. Number 5, Age of Extinction. This is a slight improvement over the worst of the Michael Bay films. Mark Wahlberg's character is frankly far more interesting than Shia LaBeouf's character. The film has the Dinobots. There's an interesting plotline about the villain trying to create his own army of Decepticons with left behind Transformers technology, but then you get the side characters of Mark Wahlberg's daughter and her boyfriend, who are pointless and drag the film down, so much so that they're not even in the next one. If it had just focused on Wahlberg, it would probably be a bit higher up. Number 4, Transformers. I'll admit this one at least attempted to get some stuff right. It's got good mythology and fun battles, but unfortunately it is drastically held back by Michael Bay's typical lowbrow crass humor. Because what Transformers needs is almost constant potty humor and sexual innuendo. If a different, classier director had made this, it may have turned out a lot better, but what we end up with this film is a very mixed bag. Number 3, Rise of the Beasts. As far as the Transformers movies go, this is certainly one of the better ones. I get that's not a high bar, but seriously, this movie is really fun, and it is somewhat of a sequel to Bumblebee. There's a throwaway line that confirms that yes, Bumblebee is still canon, and this takes a few place afterwards in the 90s. And just like how the Bumblebee movie felt like it took place in the 80s, this very much feels like a film from the 90s. It's also very clearly trying to separate itself from the Michael Bay films because there's a few jokes that are sort of meta humor, calling out some of the more problematic aspects of those films, mainly the infamously racist caricatures. But I don't really thought Pete Davidson would be a good choice for this. Personally, I find him an unfunny, annoying, talentless hack, so the main Autobot definitely should have been replaced with someone with a bit more charisma and charm. But all the other voice actors did a good job. There's some really cool character designs, and the villain is very menacing. Now, plot wise, though, it is a bit clunky. At times, it can feel like it's trying to do too much at once, and it doesn't really pick up momentum until about the second half. But the human characters in this one are actually easy to care about, unlike the Bay films, and the action in this is some of the best in the franchise. It doesn't feel overindulgent, it holds back just enough to deliver the right amount. However, the action at times can also feel a bit derivative of the MCU. There are a few directions that take some of the characters that I thought were kind of shoehorned and silly, but the cinematic universe this movie is trying to set up, I hope they follow through with. Because if that happens, it has the potential to be one of the greatest movies ever. I thought this was fun, but I wish the plot had been a bit more coherent, because Bumblebee proved they can make these movies with coherent plots, so I wish they had just made a few more edits to the script. Number 2, Transformers 1. The trailers did a terrible job of selling what this movie actually is. The trailers made it seem like this is a kiddie fair for kids ages 6 to 9, and while there is some of that here in terms of the humor, this movie was actually a very mature, thought-provoking story about the proletariat rebelling against the bourgeoisie. I'm not kidding. There's not a lot of Transformers type action. It's more of a story of class struggle and oppression, which is weird, but it also kind of works. The story is serious and deals with these mature themes, which is why the humor brings it down. It feels like the movie was made for two different audiences: the adults who grew up with the original G1 Transformers, and also their kids. It's a very weird mixture of tones that doesn't always mesh well. It's like the first couple of seasons of Star Wars The Clone Wars, where it was this very serious war drama, and then you had the cheesy one-liners from the battle droids. The story is also very reminiscent of X-Men First Class, Star Wars Revenge of the Sith, and Ants. The animation is stunning. It looks like toys come to life and is immersive. The film also has some quick references and Easter eggs related to Transformers that fans will appreciate. While not all of it lands, and it's hard to tell exactly who the target audience for this is, since kids won't really pick up on the complex themes of the film is definitely better than the trailers. It's more than meets the eye. In first place, we have Bumblebee. This movie understood what Transformers is supposed to be. It's not super over the top and chaotic. It's a simple story in the same spirit of films like E.T. and The Iron Giant. It's got a human character who's actually charming and likable, and has the funniest line in any of these movies. There's also quite a bit of heart to it. Bumblebee's dynamic with the main character is cute and sweet. It's just a fun, charming little film. Go ahead and share your ranking of the Transformers movies that you've seen, and I will see you next time.